Hello, my name is Elise, or Caffeine Misery, and today, with the release of DZ-BT-07, Moonfangs and Cerulean Blaze, we got a bunch of new cards, a bunch of new support for old decks, a couple of new decks, and today I'm going to be talking about some support for one of my top 5 decks of all time, that being the Dualmajestar, specifically the new Dualmajestar Astroea Bico Stella. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to get into the list, and I'm going to talk about a lot of the pros and cons of this new Vanguard. But first, let's go ahead and get into the ride line. Pipeless Mulchi has the same skill as every other starter, that if you go second, you draw a card. Short Sparta, when it's run upon by a Turondina, you soul charge 2, and if there was a critical trigger that was soul charged, you draw a card. And on Rearguard Circle, once per turn, if the opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, you can bind a trigger from Soul and it gains 10k. And then the grade 2, Turondina, who, when rode upon by an Astroea, you get to call her and Short Sparta from Soul. And once per turn, as long as you have a Vanguard with Dualmajestar in the name, you can counterblast 1, take 2 triggers from drop, put them to Soul, and it gets 5k. And of course, the brand new Dualmajestar Astroea Bico Stella. She's got two very powerful skills. The first one being that at the beginning of the main phase, if you did not ride that turn, you can discard a card from hand, choose an Astroea Bico Stella from your bind zone, and ride it as stand, and if you do, you persona ride. But wait, how will you be getting the Astroeas into your bind zone? Well, it's pretty simple. When this Astroea attacks for Counterblast 1 and Soul Blast 3, you Soul Blast all criticals and Astroeas Soul Blast for cost. And then you perform the following skills based on the number of Astroeas and criticals in bind. If there's one or more, you get to retire opponent's rearguard and all your front row gains 5k, which is essentially doing the if you Soul Blast 3 criticals with the original Unica. You had 3 floating 5k you could give. At 3 or more, she gets an extra crit and drive. And then at 5 or more, you get to choose one of your rear guards and stand it. Let's go ahead and get into the rest of the main deck. I am on 3 more copies of Bico Stella. Along with that, I'm on 3 copies of the brand new grade 3 Arextri Chimera, who on plays, as long as you have a grade 3 or greater Astroea, you can put a card from hand to soul, draw a card, it gains 5, and on Rearguard Circle and Guard Circle, as long as the bind zone has 1 or more of either criticals or Astroeas, it gains 10k guard, and if there's 3 or more, it has intercept. So after your first grade 3 turn, you'll be able to intercept with it. Along with that, this is something I'm not really a fan of, but we'll get into why you kind of have to do it a little bit later in the video when I talk a bit more of the strengths and weaknesses of the deck. I am still on 3 copies of Xena Dualmajestar Astroea Bico Masks, who can only be ridden from an Astroea, as the once per turn to remove a differently named Astroea from game to retire a unit and gain an extra drive. And on attack for a counterblast and 3 soul, you bind all crits, soul blast for the cost, choose a rearguard and restand it, and both her and the restood unit get 5k for every 2 critical triggers in bind. Of course, that also means I'm on 2 copies of Mask of Hydrodrum still, which when played, you can check the top 5 for a Mask or Dragon Tree card and put it to hand, then shuffle, and has the drop skill to, as long as you have a grade 3 Vanguard that isn't a mask, you can reveal a mask from your hand, put this to soul, and ride it. And then if your opponent's on grade 3 or greater, you persona ride. Lastly, for grade 3 cards, I'm on 2 copies of Dualmajestar Celestsphere, which countercharges 1 and puts 3 triggers from drop into soul. And then if you have an Astroea that was removed that turn, you can give the Vanguard an extra critical. For the grade 2s, I'm only on 2, but I'm on 2 playsets. I'm on Sternberg Chimera, which on place, as long as you have an Dualmajestar Vanguard, you can take a card from drop, put it to soul. If the Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, and you put a trigger unit into soul, it gets 5k. And when it's restood by an Astroea, as long as your bind zone has 4 more criticals, it gets an extra crit. So it's going to be your main beater. Along with that, I'm on 4 copies of Griffith Chimera, who on place for discarding a card, as long as you have an Dualmajestar Vanguard, you can check the top 2 cards of your deck. One goes to hand, the other either goes back on top or to soul, and it gets 5k for the turn. So that's going to be your main way to kind of filter out, set up your turns for big drive check swings. For grade 1s, I'm on 4 copies of Glacial Star Demonic Lady Bifrons, who, when placed from hand for a counterblast, you get to check the top 3 cards of your deck, put 1 to hand, 1 goes to soul, and the last is sent to drop. And then it has an axe skill that is, as long as you have an Dualmajestar Vanguard, once per turn you can soul blast 1 EV3. You can search your deck for either an Astroea or a critical trigger, put to soul, and shuffle. And as long as you put a card to soul, you get to revive a card for drop with grade less than or equal to your Vanguard. So this is another way to filter. This is a way you're going to be deck thinning. You're going to be getting the Bico Stellas to soul. That way, if you draw into them, you're using Chimera to get them to soul. I'm also main decking 2 copies of Short Sparta. We went over her rearguard skill earlier. The reason I'm main decking 2 more of her on top of the one from the right deck is going second. That makes sure you are hitting the 5 threshold to be able to get the restand, which you need going second. You need the extra pressure. And having 2 18k boosters is also nothing to scoff at either. It's very helpful. Well, I also have 3 copies of Plutonic Prospector. That, at the end of the battle, it attacked or boost. As long as you have an Dualmajestar or Evil Eye Vanguard, you can put it to soul, check the top 7 for a grade 3 card. So it's a way to search out your Chimera, the Mask of Hydrogrum, your Astroea masks, and as long as your bind zone has 2 or more trigger units, it gets an extra 10k card, so it's a 15k card. It's a nice early rush piece, but honestly, the bigger thing is that it's a 15k card. And lastly, I'm on regular Sentinels and the Sanctitude that's aimed at triple drive. The reason I'm on this Sanctitude right now is partially because of Stride decks. Nyra's is still in format, though it's obviously not the best deck. We're in Bob format now. But more importantly, this is kind of in preparation for next format, set 8 format, because you will be seeing draw dueled back. It's not going to be making a big splash, but it is important to keep in mind. I feel having a free guard to throw at that is going to be incredibly helpful. For triggers, this is Astroea, so we are maxing out on our critical triggers. We're at 8. We are on soul crits. They are mandatory in here because sometimes some turns you don't have all the cards somehow. It's very rare, but you do have the extra soul crit. So when you swing the first column, you just put it to soul. Astroea swing, you have the 3 in bind. I'm also on 3 of the 20k guard fronts. The reason I'm on the guard fronts instead of the soul ones is because you have enough soul generation in the deck already. The Sternberg Chimera and Arakchi Chimera. It doesn't seem like a lot, but because of Bifrons, you're always cycling them. With Bifrons, you can Soul Blast a critical, Energy Blast 3, put the Astroea into soul, call the Sternberg back from drop. Sternberg puts the crit back in. You're gonna be able to build up enough soul pretty reliably that I don't feel you need. I don't really feel like you need the extra soul from the soul fronts. I'm on 4 regular heals. And then I am on Spiritual King of Aquatics, Idosfaro, that when it's drove check, you get to take a card from drop, put it back to hand, and give one of your units a critical. So, why am I still on Astroea Bico Mass? The answer is pretty straightforward. The deck doesn't really have scaling power. It doesn't get really big. I've been testing it a good bit. This is what I've settled on for right now. Oh, but it's... the Bico Mass, I feel, is pretty clunky, but you can't really do much without it in the deck because you don't have... It's your finisher. It's what lets you close out games, because Stella, she doesn't really give much power. She gives 5k to the front. On a Persona turn, that's only 15k. Maybe 20 if you called both these two or Erecti that turn. And the short Spartas are big boosters, but it's just not a lot of power that you're bringing at your opponent. It's not a lot you're going in at them with. So while, yes, you're going to have 2 units with crits, without the additional scaling, the extra 10, 15k even, that Bico Masks can give you, it's a lot harder to close out games. The deck, I really like the direction they're going with Astroea. I really like how Bico Stella works. I like superior riding into Persona Ride from your bind zone. I like that Bifron, us putting in Astroea to Soul, doesn't feel nearly as frustrating sometimes, because they're not just being Soul Blasted cycled continuously. They're being used as an additional resource. But the deck doesn't really have anything to close it out itself. Overall, I really do like the deck. I like the direction it's going. I do hope at some point I can cut the mask stuff, because I feel like it puts a lot of strain on the deck. It's an extra 5 to 6 slots with no guard value. And along with that, the way Stella is right now, you're kind of living or dying by Bifrons. Astroea Unica into masks. Yeah, it relied on Bifrons, but it wasn't live or die by the card. It had other things it could do. It had ways to keep playing and put pressure on, because Bico Mask scales really well into the late game. All in all, I'm really hoping with the next wave of support in when we'll probably get another wave in set 10 or 11, I hope when we hit those waves, we get more power, we get something that lets it scale up better. Because right now, while I like the deck, I like the direction, it's a little clunky, it's missing finishers. And there's other tech cards you can use to like sort of get around that. I've seen some people online using the boost order package. I don't really like it personally for me, but I see why people do. It gives that extra oomph to try and hit it, but the issue is that first swing, if you're not boosting it, it's not really a threat without it. But that also means that the second swing, unless you're on masks, won't be a really big threat. But that's my take on the deck. Again, this is one of my favorite decks of all time. I like where it's going. If you guys liked the video, do all the YouTube things, like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. I'll see y'all next week. Ciao.